So hello, everyone. I am Andrea Vance. I have a business here in Los Gatos. It's called Cultivated Health Acupuncture. And today I have with me another business. I want to get started today by letting John introduce himself and to tell us a little bit about his business and how it got started. So welcome, John. Thank you for making time for this.
Thank you, Andrea. So my name is John Masagegian. I've been in the Valley, basically since I was born, 1975. The business, Pruneyard Financial Group, we got started back in 2000. It was a merger between two firms, an accountancy firm, Denby and Company, which was owned and operated by my father and his partner, Frank Denby. And then Shell Schumacher had a partnership with a number of brokers that had gone independent. And in 2000, California changed the legal requirements for forming companies with accountants so that an accountant and a non-accountant could be partners. John and Shell had built up a friendship over the years, and they decided to combine their firms to provide pretty much sort of a one-stop holistic financial solution for middle to high net worth individuals.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was a really fortuitous time in the industry. The small brokerage houses were starting to sort of get their feet. The registered advisors were starting to sort of make an impact in the marketplace, and it's been a good ride. We really enjoyed being able to provide the service. In 2015, both Shell and my father retired, and Shell's son Steve and I took over the business, and we've been running it ever since.
That's wonderful. So a real family legacy, as well as a really, keen depth of understanding and appreciation for things that have happened in the Valley, going back into the 70s with, where your father was at, around the time that his family was starting and you were coming on the scene, but also how you have a sense of understanding that now as you serve the public. So I think that's tremendous.
We stretch back in Silicon Valley quite a bit. My grandfather was actually, he and my father ran a savings and loan. So a lot of the track housing and whatnot that you see in basically as far south as Gilroy and up into Santa Rosa, a lot of that track housing was developed through mortgage lending deals that ran through State Mortgage.
Oh, wow. And State Mortgage was the company that your grandfather and your
Correct. Yeah.
father then worked for him. So we're looking at three generations then of financial management, advising that have impacted the Valley in a really, really tangible way.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So the primary component that Pruneyard Financial Group offers is financial advising, including accounting services and taxes, and then also money management. Is there anything else that you would add to kind of explain the services that you offer to the community and to people who engage in your services?
Sure. We like to say that if something has a financial component to it, we have an opinion. We offer money management services, and the corollary to that, of course, is that there should be some financial planning that goes into any sort of long-term investing strategy. We do provide accountancy services. So in our context, that's tax planning as part of a tax preparation engagement, support for small businesses in terms of accounting. I tend to shy personally away from bookkeeping, but we do provide support so that a small business person can set up their own books and maintain them. And then, from there, we really try to focus on being aware of what the client is trying to accomplish and then sort of giving them some alternative paths and how to get there. Most of the financial advice, let me back up. We offer two main service lines. So we'll do a managed account under what's a wrap fee. So that would be an assets under management fee. it's pretty typical for the industry, depending on the amount of assets you have under management, the marginal fee goes down. And then we also do tax return preparation. And while the fee is typically quoted at a flat fee rate, it's basically based on about a 250 an hour kind of a rate. Those are the stated services, but in order to do provide those services effectively, you really have to touch on more than just the stated contract. If I don't know much about your personal situation, I can't give you good financial advice. I can't I can't give you good tax advice. And so we really do try to develop a relationship with our clients so that we have a clear picture of where they're trying to go, and sort of the main points on how they want to get there.
I know that for me, our interface with Pruneyard Financial Group started with your father when we first came to the Valley 15 years ago. And what you just said totally resonates with the experience I had. I never had someone define it that way. But I was really struck by the time your father took, and in working with now you and Steve, that you both take in understanding what is the priority of the clients that you provide services to, and how does that impact decision making. So you've talked about this kind of like hierarchy, and then how we should make decisions versus how we do make decisions. So if you could touch on that, I think that could maybe shed some light for people in terms of some of the decisions they make and what really is the truth. So explain that again.
Sure. So, I mean, my dad actually came up with the basic framework, in that most people, they like to believe that they're rational. And so the first way that they approach a decision is that financial component. Can I afford it? And then, of course, very smart, savvy, they want to be aware of the tax situation. So they're going to look at the tax situation to make sure that they're not spending more money than they need to. And then finally, granted, there's some kind of emotional component, but it's not really the main criteria. And the reality is, um, that's almost perfectly inverted. The emotional component, that reason for it, it provides the motivation and the reason for why we make our financial decisions. If
Mhm.
your emotions aren't in line with your financial goals, you pretty much, you set yourself up for failure. So
Mm.
I mean, it also it's really necessary to get a clear idea of why you want to do what you're trying to do, and that you're genuinely happy with the result. A really quick example: most of my high net worth clients at one time or another have said, "Hey, John, does it make sense to move out of California? High tax state, high cost. Can I move out of state? And is that sensible?" And the answer to that question is, well, it depends. And that frankly, that's the answer to every financial question you'll ever ask, right? It depends. um, the trouble with moving out of California is, if you've spent your whole life here, you have an expectation in terms of the environment. You have, your roots, your connections with your friends and possibly your family, and those have a value associated that isn't easily replicated, or comparable to a 10% greater income, because you're not paying California tax. So you really have to evaluate the worth of those things before you answer the question of, should I move out of state? For myself, I'm pretty tight with my family, and I don't have a large friend network. So as long as my family is close by, that's really the criteria. So if my family decided, hey, you know what, we're tired of living in California, let's all move to Arizona, it would be a very easy decision to relocate. Um, but that's all emotional. That's entirely from the heart. Once you establish what your heart wants to do, then you can start looking at what the pocketbook can afford. That's the financial component. And we can help with sort of different avenues on how to facilitate that. Again, with the example of the in-state and the out-of-state. California, one of the highest real estate areas in the country. A number of my clients who are contemplating retirement have been looking at, well, I might be more comfortable in Arizona. The problem with that is California wants to take a huge cut of whatever value is in their house, when you sell that house, there's a big tax hit. And so there's some strategies and ways that you can sort of organize that move so that you can lessen that burden. Um, but again, that's the last thing that we consider. The first thing we're looking at is, hey, do I want to move? The second question is, well, can I afford to move? And then the final question is, what can I do from a tax perspective to minimize the cost?
Mhm.
And I mean, that's basically it. It's not very complicated, uh, but it is very relevant from a psychology perspective. Um, we joke about it a bit in my family's a bunch of accountants. We joke about it a bit in my family, but I mean, you go to school with the emphasis on numbers, but your interaction with people almost necessitates some experience, some felicity with human psychology, because
Yeah.
all of these decisions are very much driven by what's in your heart.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And I think that in the spectrum of people who I've interviewed, especially those with small businesses, I'm sure they're shaking their heads and they're nodding as they're watching this, because that entrepreneurial spirit, that some of the dynamics of the United States, um, the freedom to kind of like, act on impetus, you know, it's always kind of like that dueling dynamic of the passion and the heart behind it, and then the financial components of it. So I think what's really valuable and what I've always appreciated in our dealings with Pruneyard is the objective providing of information, and well researched, very knowledgeable information, because then I can be a little bit more objective and I can balance like the heart and you know the drive to do something with the framework in which to do it successfully. Yeah. In terms of accounting services, the advice that has, kind of become just, you know, an inherent part of everything you do, is there anything that you would want people to know as they are working with financial experts, either personally or if they have a business, or even in just the face of what everybody's having to be very careful about financially because of what's happened?
Well, I mean, the biggest thing I would say is to be engaged. Um, when you're youngish, say under 40, most of the decisions that you need to make in terms of a long-term financial plan, they're not terribly complicated. You don't need to spend several thousands of dollars to put together a financial plan. What you need is clear goals and the willingness to look at the financial situation as it is, not as you wish it to be. And you know, we we find that we can be effective partners with our clients with that mindset. We can help them to see their goals. And I mean, the reality is everybody's busy, and this circumstance with the COVID has just made it all that much more acute. It can be very difficult to set time apart and get the books in order. It can be difficult to set time apart and get the SEP set up and running. And once the framework is in place, a lot of this stuff is just sort of habitual.
Hmm.
Right now, I'm going through the process of refinancing my own house, and I highly recommend for anybody, if you own a house, you've got a mortgage, pay attention to interest rates. You're going to save yourself a ton of money over your life if you just pay attention to the opportunities for refinancing.
Hmm.
But we're going through that right now, and one of the things that we decided is, look, let's go ahead and um, you know force the term to be a little shorter, force the payments to be a little larger. And we've looked through our budget, so we know that will work. And now it's automatic. I don't have to think about an additional decision. We've just sort of moved one of the long-term factors of our financial health, and now it's on autopilot. And a lot of long-term financial planning basically comes down to that. I mean, you can absolutely squeeze out marginal improvements with high engagement, daily looking at your spending habits.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the really big decisions that will drive the ultimate results. And that's where we'd like to have a discussion. I tell clients looking for financial plans that they really need to start with getting an idea of what their goals are.
Mhm.
Historically, you go to a CPA, they'll put a financial plan together. It's a lot of data aggregation. Give me all of this information. I put it in the form of a personal financial statement. We make some assumptions about what's going to happen over the next 20 or 30 years, and then out comes a result. And you walk away saying, okay, I have a financial plan, and we walk away with a check, typically a 4-figure check. But I mean, that's a starting point. And I think really it's an expensive starting point that doesn't
Mm.
necessarily give you what you need.
Mhm.
I think what people need is a financial coach, an ongoing engagement, um, and you have to be cost sensitive. We tend to build in an expectation with our clients that they will engage with us on long-term financial goals as part of managing their money, as part
Mhm.
of working through their tax situation. So,
Mhm.
you know, uh, going back to sort of the historical model, you do your financial plan and then it gets updated, once every 3 years or so
Mhm.
for the changing situation. How much more useful would it be to have that discussion annually? And how much easier on the pocketbook would it be if it was part of a wrapped service? And
Yeah.
that's been my attitude, is rather than trying to push a financial planning engagement, um, get a relationship going, an ongoing relationship going, and then check in periodically as
Mhm.
part of that ongoing engagement. Um, it really is about engagement. It's about paying attention to what's going on in your financial life and whether or not it's heading in the direction that you want it to. And the barrier to entry on that, really, it's quite low. Just as a quick example, nobody likes budgeting. Well, nobody but accountants like budgeting. Um, when my wife and I got married, we did a very to the penny budget to make sure that we could pay for the wedding. And 9 months later, we had the wedding under budget. It all went great on us, and we haven't touched a budget since. It served its purpose, and it certainly helped the two of us learn about each other. But most people don't have the time to create and maintain a budget of their personal life. The thing is, you already kind of know what your budget is. You've got a paycheck, you've got an end of the year statement that you provide the IRS that says, look, I made this much money. Well, you take that number, you subtract out anything you saved, any debt that you paid off, and what's left is your budget. That's what you spent. We don't really care how you spent it. Ultimately, that's your decision, right? If I want to spend half my income on my house because I want a big house, or I want to live in anywhere in Silicon Valley, then that's your decision. If a subscription to Netflix is a primary component, then that's on you. That's not something that we would look to judge or have any business in trying to
Mhm.
judge. But you
Mhm.
need to know the
Yeah.
number. You need to know
Yes.
how much, and that's a very easy starting point.
Yeah.
For long-term planning, the general guideline is you need to replace that income. Whatever you're spending now, you're probably going to spend it in retirement. The allocations will be a little different, probably a little bit more money into healthcare, probably in the early years, a little bit more money into travel, and hopefully a lot less money on the housing because the house ideally is paid off. But I
Mhm.
mean, the actual budgeting process, it doesn't have to be nearly as precise. And frankly, the more engaged you are with your finances, the better
Mhm.
feel you develop for your personal budget, such that the specificity isn't quite so critical.
Yeah. Everything you said totally resonates with having that relationship and having someone as a coach and or just in the position to provide valuable advice. And the idea of engagement, if I were to take that and translate it like into my world, it it's consistent because someone who otherwise thinks they have a busy life but doesn't prioritize their health and well-being is going to find that their health and well-being declines. Just like someone who doesn't engage in their finances, who won't take the time to look at where am I spending my money and is my money being saved and or allocated appropriately, are going to find themselves in financial hardship. And the prioritizing of it in the framework of we're busy and we have a lot that is on our plate at any given time. And then it comes back to consistency, which any health and fitness coach is going to tell you is the number one thing that is going to get results. There's no magic bullet, there's no quick fix. You know what I mean? We're only going to get out what we consistently put in. And I think that that is really, really awesome as a framework because it translates into other areas. And then when you can have a financial advisor um, who provides that as a framework, it enhances your life in every other realm because you may find that I do have that extra money to invest in my health and well-being. I can hire a personal trainer. I can prioritize eating better, and that may mean spending a little bit more money on better products. I can afford to see the healthcare providers that can enhance my health and well-being and make me that much more of a thriving individual to do what I do. And anyway, that's kind of just, coalesce what you said. And I think that that's tremendous. And I hope that people can see that when they seek the services from financial professionals, that this is an example of what they should be looking for.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Well, John, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your ideas and your perspective, and for telling us a little bit about the legacy and the longstanding support that Pruneyard has provided to people here in the community. And I hope that people who watch this video get a sense of how the services that you provide can be of value to them at some point, if not just taking some of those things you said and having a different perspective
Thank you,
financially.
Andrea. Thank you very much.
I hope you guys are enjoying these stories. And at the end of this video, there's going to be details and information on Pruneyard Financial Group. And if you're interested in connecting with John and Steve and the services they provide, go ahead and check out the link on YouTube. Otherwise, thank you so much, John. You have a great day.
You too.